Hello guys, you're welcome to this video. This video is an attempt from me to explain a certain programming concept called generics. Actually, I've been getting a lot of questions as regards this topic from friends and colleagues alike. Well, it seems to me like a lot of people cannot just wrap their heads around this concept. And considering how useful generics can be to our everyday program, I think it's nice that I dropped this video. So if you're having any trouble with generics, I hope this video clears some air for you. And if you have any question or suggestion or request, you can sure drop it in the comment section and I'll look into it right away. And do ensure you subscribe to the channel to get any new video coming from me. So thank you very much. Okay. I've been thinking of a problem that we're going to solve that will enable us understand generics in depth. And I kind of come up with this idea. Just imagine we're building an application to manage artists. We know there are a lot of artists and we know that there are different types of artists, right? We know a musician is an artist. Somebody who writes, right, is an artist. Somebody who paints is an artist. Okay, we're trying to create a program that will manage our artists, right? So this is our main class. This is our code class where we're going to be running our code. So I'm going to go ahead and create an artist class. So I'll say what? Artist. Good. Now these are artists. So we know that even though there are different types of artists, but we sure know that there are a lot of generic things that all artists have, right? We know every artist will have a name, so we're going to create that variable to store this name. So it's going to be a private string, right? Name. We know every artist has an age, so private int. I'm gonna use an integer for the name, for the age, sorry. We know there are a lot of things, so many things that every artist has, but I'm gonna leave it to this. I don't want to complicate things, right? So we now have our artist, right? And then we'll go over here and we'll create our artist. We'll say what? PSVM. Alright. Artist. Artist equals new artist. Cool. We've created our artist. Now the artist, but right now the artist does not, right? And we have no way of accessing anything from the artist, like his name, his age and stuff. So I would like to go back to the artist and provide maybe generate some getters, setters, right? Getters and setters for the artist. I want to generate everything. So we can get the artist name, we can get his age, we can set the name and age. So that's cool, right? So after creating our artist, I would like to name the artist. I'll say artist dot set name. I'm gonna give it John. We now have an artist with the name of John. Oh, sorry. I'm doing right. John number lock. So I would like to set his age. This guy is 23. Set age. Okay, the guy is 23, right? So we now have our artist running. We can do something with this. We can say the name of this artist is, so I'm gonna concatenate artist dot get name. Oh, can do this way sometimes. Is concatenate his age is, then I'm gonna concatenate with this age, right? Artist dot get age. Cool. Now if we run our code, we should see that everything is working fine, right? Let me run it. Since this is our first run, it's gonna take a while to do that, right? But I'm all right. The name of this artist is John. His age is 23. So there's nothing new here. Okay. So we now know that our artist is working fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and create another class. Go ahead and create the next class. I think it's best that I explain what this class is supposed to do. The next class we're going to be creating is called club class. Okay. We know that artists normally join clubs where they meet other artists and they collaborate together, they brainstorm together, and they create beautiful things. Okay. So this is the class that we're going to be creating. This class should give a functionality that an artist can join a particular instance of this class club. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing, and I know that a musician would rather join a band than join a club, but for the purpose of this program we're going to assume that a club is the same thing as a band for a musician. So that's what I want to explain. So we'll get back to our code. So I'm going to create a club class. Okay, club. The club will have a name, private name of club, right? Private string, sorry, private string name. Cool. And club will have private, we're going to use an array list, right, to manage the members. So private array list, private array list, club members. Good. We now have the name of the club. We now have the array list to hold the members, right? So we are going to create functions that will enable us add a member to the club. You know what? I'm going to create a constructor. I'm going to create a constructor so that creating a club will be easier for us, right? We don't have to create the constructor and set names. So we'll just create the constructor with the name. So it's going to be public club. It's going to accept string of name, sorry, name. So it's going to be this dot name should be given what? Name. Cool. So whenever we're creating a club, we'll have to supply the name of the club. Alright? But we know that the club members will still be null, right? So we now have our club class and we have our artist class, right? So we're going to use our club. Let me create a club here. After creating this artist, I would like to create a club. So it's going to be club, let's say writers club, sorry, writers club equals to new club. So I have to give the name writers. Change. Writers for Change. So this is the name of the club, Writers for Change. So we can go ahead and use this Writers Club and add. Okay, but we've not created the functionality to add new members to the club. Okay. Here we're going to initialize the club. The club, okay, this is the club, right? All right. We're going to initialize the club. So it's going to be club members equals to new array list. I'm not going to give the size of the array. So it's going to be like this. So we've initialized our club, and I want to create a function. Let me create a setter and getter for the name. So setter and getter for club for the name property. Okay. I'm gonna create a public method which returns a boolean to tell us that okay, this member has been added to the club successfully, right? So it's going to be public boolean add member. It's going to receive what? An artist A. Once it receives this artist, it's going to add it to the club. So it's going to be club members dot add. We pass in the artist, right? Cool. After we're done, we return true. Cool. And now I know it seems like the boolean has no business of being here, but we're going to leave it this way. So we can now set the name of the artist. Even after creating it, we can change the name, right? We can get the name, we can add new members to the club. Let's also create a function to print all the club members in this club. So it's going to be a public void print members. Doesn't receive anything. The club members dot for each, right? For each of these club members, we want to print the artist. We want to print the artist. Artist. I want to print the artist, right? This function print members is doing is it's printing all of the artists that we've actually registered in the club. So we know club members is the array list that holds our artists. So we are saying for each of these artists, print it. For each of these artists, print it. But there's a problem here. We are not going to get the desired output we need, because this print function is going to use this artist to string function, and it's going to give us something we don't actually need. But we can override the to string function here. Let me override it. Override public string to string. To string, we are going to return what? This dot name plus, let me give a space, all right, plus this dot age. Let's just leave it this way. So this way now we're not going to print the default to string. we are going to print our own custom to string, right? So it's going to print the name of the artist and its age. So now let's come back here. We've created this artist, this club, right? We're going to add this artist to it. So it's going to be, then we're going to pass what artist as the member. You know what, I'm going to copy this one and create another artist here. See, and give a space, Control V. So this one will be our artist 2, artist 2, artist 2, right? This guy is going to be Abdul, and his age is going to be 14. So I'm going to add him. I'm forgetting my semicolons. I've been doing Kotlin a lot these days and I'm always forgetting my semicolons, so bear with me. So I'm going to add artist 2, which is Abdul, to writers club dot add member. I'm gonna add artist 2. Cool. We now have what, 2 artists to our so I'm going to remove this guy. We now have 2 artists to our club. How about we print them? Oh, sorry. So it's going to be writers club dot print members. So let me run this code and see what happens. Run main. We'll wait for it to run. Cool. Look at our members. John 23, Abdul 14. But the problem is we don't know which club they belong to. So at least in the, we should at least print out something to show that, okay, these members belong to this club. So I'm going to print out what do I print? Members for club this dot name, right? Okay, we're trying to print members for club, then we're calling this name, right? Whatever the user used in creating the club. So let me run this code once more and see what happens. Okay, members for club, writers for change. We have John 23, Abdul 24. Artist. Let me create another artist. Let me create another artist down here. Let me create another artist. You know, I copied this creation of the first artist in the first place, so I'm going to keep using it. Let me create another artist. This one is going to be artist 3. Artist 3. Artist 3. This guy is Donald. Donald is 30. But this guy is not a writer. He's actually a musician. So we need to create a different club for musicians, right? So I'm going to create that. I'm going to copy this because I hate typing, right? I hate typing. So I'm going to copy this and create a new club. Okay, let me do it down here. Right, let me create a new club, but instead this guy is going to be musicians club, and the club name is going to be musicians for life. I know this club name sounds crazy, but just bear with it. Musicians for life. Cool. So this will be the club that I'm going to add the third artist to. So it's going to be musicians club dot add member, and this member is artistry. Cool. So we now have two clubs, one for writers and the other for musicians. Okay, why am I going this very slow? I want you to understand this from the start to the finish. That's why I'm going very, very slow. There is an obvious problem here that you may not notice. The problem is, for this musicians club, we can add, for example, add artist 1. We can add artist, right? And it will work fine. Why is that? Well, we know artist 1 is a writer and not a musician. But somehow this club is accepting artist 1 into the club. And we know in the real world that will not happen. If you have a club for musicians, only musicians will join that club. If you have a club for artists, for writers, only writers will join that club. But for some reason, this program is not actually keeping to that restriction. All right? And that's where the problem arises. And I think that's what generics try to solve. Right? Of puppet classes that accept type parameters. It accepts type parameters, not just classes, methods, and stuff. You restrict it to certain type parameters, but they are so open that you can use it for whatever purpose. It's as generic as possible so that it covers a lot of purposes, but once you define your types, they are restricted to that type. So this is what we are going to use. I will go to my club. And how do we do generics, right? How do we specify that this class can accept types, right? How do you do this? You use angle brackets for it. So here you come to the club and you say what? This guy accepts what? T. This guy accepts T. So this T stands for what? The type that we're going to be using for this class, in our case club. So if we're going to be using club, then where do we add members? Here we add members. We're going to say this method must only accept a class of type what? T. Type parameter T, right? So what are we saying here? We're saying this public method, which is add member, can only accept an object of type what? I know this is getting a little bit confusing, but just follow me through. So just like previously, this method only accepts a member of type artist. We are saying this one accepts an arbitrary type T, right? It could be anything. It could be an artist, it could be whatever you can think of, right? So, but if you look closely, this is not solving our issue. In fact, it opens more room for mistakes, right? Because we are not only restricted to artists now, we are open to whatever type, right? It could be any type that you can think of, and that's not what we want. But this type, we can say, okay, this T must be of type what? Artist. Cool. What we are saying in essence is this club is going to be using a certain type, right? We are going to be adding members to our club, but we are not going to be adding just any member. This member must be of a type, and that type must be of this artist type. Must be a child of this artist. So we know that there are a lot of artists, right? Like I said in the beginning, there are a lot of artists, and musicians are artists, writers are artists, right? So whatever type we're going to be passing to this add member it must be of a subtype of artist. So that's what it's saying in the first place. So this is how you define a generic class. This class accepts a type, and this type must be a child of artist. So that's what we're saying. So when we come back here, we try to run our code and it works fine. It works fine without issues, right? Cool, it works fine without issues. And why is that? Even after stating that, okay, even after stating that our method here, where did I even do this? Yep, add member. Even after stating that our method here must be of type T, right? But if you look closely, you see that, okay, an artist is also an artist. Instead, a musician is an artist, writer is an artist is also an artist. So here, even though this guy is a writer, well, he's also an artist, and our add member method is restricted to only artists, right? Or children of artists. So how do we place this restriction now? Instead, we are going to create a separate class for writers, and we're going to create a separate class for musicians. So I'm going to do it right away. I'm going to create a class for writer, sorry. And I'm going to create a class for musician. Good. So I have two classes now. So we know that a writer is also an artist. So he's going to extend what? Artist. Good. And by implication, it also inherits everything that an artist has, that is the age and the name, right? Okay, so we now have a musician, which is also an artist, so that's why it's extending this artist class. So we're going to create a constructor for this, public musician. Okay, it's going to accept string name and int age. So I'm going to call the super method now. Okay, super. So I'm going to set the age to this age here. I'm going to set the name. All right. Set name to name. Cool, right? We now have our musician. We're not creating anything new here. We know we're extending an artist, right? An artist. So everything that an artist has, a musician also has. So we're just calling whatever is inside artist, we're calling the age, we're setting the age, we're calling the name, and we're setting the name here. So I don't want to copy everything from the artist class and paste it here, because we'll have to do the same for what? Writer. It's best we leave it here, so that everything is generic. We don't have to repeat ourselves. So we now have our musician class in place. Let me copy this. All right, like I told you, I hate typing, so I'm gonna copy and paste and rename this musician. Oh, sorry, musician. So we have our musician, public musician. Where am I getting wrong? Writer. Can you imagine? Writer. Good. So we now have our writer and we have our musician. Still throwing us an error. And what's the error? I don't seem to see any error here. Okay, we have an extra semicolon here. I think we're good now. We have our musician class, and we have our writer class. So the first time we actually created artists right away. But this time around, we're not going to be creating artists. We are going to be creating either a writer or a musician. So I'm going to create a writer now. Writer, let me call him a writer. Equals to new writer. Then we pass in the name of the writer, right? So it's going to be James. You can give any name you want. And we pass in the age, which is 23. Good. Let me create another writer. Writer 1 equals to, new writer. I'm going to pass in name as Steve. His age, this is not my real age, by the way, as 18. Let me go ahead and create another set of artists, which is musician equals new musician, right? I'm gonna pass the name let me say Abdul. Let me reuse these names. And his age is 17. And create another musician 1 equals to new musician. Beyonce. For age is, I don't know her age, by the way, so I'm gonna give 30. Good. We now have two sets of artists. One set is for writers and the other for musicians, right? So I'm gonna create two clubs now. Club, writers club, new club. And we know when creating a club, we pass in the name, right? I'll say writers club. Good. I'm going to create another club. A musicians club. Custom new club, right? Musicians club. So this is the name of the club. Cool. So we now have two sets of artists and we have two clubs to go with. So I'm gonna add members now. Writers club dot add member. This member receives an artist. Add member receives an artist. So we can pass in an artist. Now we can pass an artist as long as the object you're passing is an artist, it will work. So even though it's a writers club, we can pass musician to it, we can pass writer to it. For example, now I can pass writer to it, right? And it smiles at us. We can still add to it again, writers club. Writers club, we can add musician to it. And it's also valid. Why? Because the add member receives an artist, right? But we can limit this to what? We can limit this, when creating the club, we can limit it to the type that we want. So how do you do this? You come here and just give your angle brackets. Okay, let me come back to the club and explain something. We said when creating this club class, we can actually pass a type that extends an artist. So if we don't pass any type, it accepts what? An artist. Any artist. But when we pass a type that is a child of the artist, it only accepts that type. Alright? I hope it makes sense. So I'm going to come back to our main. So here, so what type are we going to be accepting? We're going to be accepting only writers here. So it accepts this type of writer. So what type of artists we are going to be accepting here? Sorry, we're going to be accepting, this club is not musician. So we know that this club is not going to be accepting anything other than a writer, and this club will not accept anything other than a musician. So you can see we're adding a writer to the writers club, and it smiles at us. When adding a musician to the writers club, it doesn't, because we said this club, writers club, is going to accept only this type, writer. From here you can see this club can accept a type, and that type must extend what? An artist. But if we don't give any type, it accepts what? Only artist. So it could be a musician or a writer. But if we give the type, which is either a writer or a musician, then it accepts only musicians here. You see, the type of the object we're going to be accepting here will be of type T. So we don't know what this T would stand for, but then we know it will stand for something, right? So here we are saying this T should be writer. So, and we know in the add member method, it accepts that type that we specify in the creation of the club class. So it accepts that type and only that type. So when we say writer, so add member will accept or just writers. It will not accept anything other than writers. So that's why when we are adding musician, it doesn't smile at us. You can see it says add member, it accepts writer. In club cannot be applied to what? Musician. So there's so this will only work if we change this guy to what? Musician club. Cool. So as you can see now, we're adding every artist to their right club, right? And generics enable us to do that. It cuts a lot of potential errors. There are lots of times that you'd forget and add a member that does not belong to a particular club. Generics warns you beforehand. When you actually give the types, actually it warns you beforehand, and you never have to make that mistake, right? So even though the club class is more generic, you can tailor it down to your specific purpose, right? And that's the beauty of generics. So you can, one thing to note is the writer class doesn't just work on its own. It has to extend, the writer class has to extend the artist for this to work, right? Because in the club class we said the type that we're going to be supplying at the creation of this club must extend what? An artist. So if you're creating a writer, it must extend an artist. So let's say you're creating another type of artist, which is a painter. Once you create the painter class must extend an artist. It must extend an artist for this to work. Else, let's try it. Let me create a class, painter, right? And well, there's nothing to do here. Let me go back here and create a painter. Equals to new, wow, painter. Okay, there's nothing to do here because I've not given it any property to initialize, so we cannot add it to any of this club, right? That's the writers club. Add member. Let me pass in painter. We get an error, even though a painter is also an artist, but we've not specified in the code that this painter is an artist. So we have to extend it, right? It must extend an artist, right? Cool, but we still get an error because even though it's an artist, it is not what? A writer, right? So you have to create your painters club. You specify the type here. Sorry, you create a painters club right down here. Club of type painter. Let's say painters club. Painters club. Sorry. Pen club. And we pass in what? Oh, you see? That's a problem. We pass in the name of the club, which is what? Painters club. Painters club. You see the problem here? This one is a little bit grayed out. Now this one is just creating a club without the type, but somehow it's casting it to a club that contains writers. But to get this out, we need to follow it up here. Yep. All right. You can see it must adhere to, okay, we're saying wherever this new object we're creating must adhere to whatever we declared here, which is writer club. Without this, we are saying it's just a club, right? But somehow it's being casted to writer club. So this one will take the one from it. So you see, first of all, when creating a club, we need to specify the type that we're going to be using in that club. And when creating an artist, like an artist class, this class must extend an artist, right? If we're creating a painter class, the painter class must extend an artist. A writer class must extend an artist for this to work. Alright? So, and when we create the club, we specify the type of artist we'll be using in that club. Magic.